My name is Linda Hayes. I'm 63 years old, and I never thought I'd be telling this story, much less living it. I had lived most of my life quietly, with my books, my garden, and a soft-spoken husband named Robert. We met in our late 40s, both divorced, and looking not for excitement, but for comfort. He had 2 children from his previous marriage, and I had 1 daughter of my own. We married and blended our families, but given the ages of our kids, it was more a ceremonial act than a parenting challenge. They were grown, living their own lives. Robert's son, Jeremy, had a son of his own, Ethan. Ethan was 19 when everything changed. I didn't know Ethan well. I'd only met him a handful of times over the years at family functions, Thanksgiving, Christmas dinners. He was polite, quiet, and always had his headphones around his neck. He had those deep, thoughtful eyes that make you feel like he knows something he'll never say. I never thought much of it. He was just a teenager to me. Everything began when Jeremy called, asking if Ethan could stay with us for a few months. Ethan had recently started college in our town but couldn't afford the dorm fees anymore. Jeremy and his wife were dealing with their own financial issues, and I sensed some tension that Jeremy didn't want to talk about. I glanced at Robert. He shrugged. We both agreed. We have the spare room, I said. He's family. When Ethan arrived with his duffel bag, he looked different from how I remembered. Taller, leaner, and carrying himself like he had seen too much too soon. He gave me a polite hug, called me Grandma Linda, and thanked me for letting him stay. At first, everything went smoothly. He was respectful, clean, and even helped with groceries and yard work. I was surprised by how mature he seemed for a 19-year-old. He had this calm energy about him, always quiet, always reading or typing on his laptop. I'd find myself watching him sometimes, not in any inappropriate way, just curious about the mysterious young man who had suddenly entered my house and my routine. One night, Robert had to travel for a weekend to visit his daughter in Seattle. It was the first time I'd be alone in the house with Ethan. I didn't think much of it, though there was a small, strange flutter in my chest. Maybe nerves, maybe just unfamiliarity. That Friday evening, I made a pot roast. Ethan sat at the table, complimenting the food like he was at a 5-star restaurant. He made me laugh, actually laugh, something I hadn't done in weeks. After dinner, we watched a movie together in the living room. Nothing dramatic, just an old comedy on TV. But as the night wore on, I felt different. His presence filled the room in a way I couldn't explain. Not inappropriate, just powerful, like he saw more of me than others did. He listened when I spoke, asked me questions about my past, my dreams, my regrets. Nobody had done that in years. I found myself opening up to him more than I expected. I told him about the art classes I used to take before marrying Robert, about the novel I'd started and never finished, about my complicated relationship with my daughter. He listened intently, like none of it bored him. It felt meaningful. Over the next few weeks, Ethan and I fell into a rhythm. We had coffee together in the mornings before he left for classes. He started joining me for evening walks. He even helped fix the back fence without being asked. But what stood out the most was how he made me feel seen. Not just as his step-grandmother, but as Linda. A woman with layers, history, a life worth asking about. One afternoon, he came home early. I was in the backyard garden, trying to tug out an old weed bush. I slipped and fell, twisting my ankle. I winced, trying to stand, but the pain was sharp. Ethan ran over, lifted me like I weighed nothing, and carried me inside. He set me down gently on the couch and examined my ankle. "We need to ice this," he said, rushing to the freezer. I watched him, grateful and oddly flustered. There was a gentleness in him I hadn't expected. As he wrapped the ice pack around my foot, his fingers brushed against my skin, and I felt something. Something I didn't want to admit. For the next few days, he insisted on helping me with everything, cooking, laundry, even brushing the dog. His care was overwhelming. And with each small moment, each glance, each smile, I felt the lines blur between comfort and confusion. Then came the night I will never forget. I was in the kitchen late, unable to sleep. The moonlight poured in through the window. Ethan walked in, also sleepless. We sat at the table, sharing leftover apple pie. I laughed at something he said, and he smiled, really smiled, and for a second I saw not a boy but a man. And then he said it. "You deserve more, Linda." I froze. "What do you mean?" "I see how you live. You give everything to others. But when's the last time someone gave something back to you? Something real?" I couldn't answer. My chest tightened. He reached out, gently placing his hand on mine. It lingered, warm and steady. I didn't pull away. And that was the moment everything changed. Nothing inappropriate happened, not physically. But something shifted between us. A line had been crossed, not with action, but with emotion. He had cracked open a part of me I thought was long buried. Over the next few weeks, I found myself wrestling with guilt, confusion, and longing. Not because I wanted something forbidden, but because I had awakened. I began writing again, something I hadn't done in years. I pulled out my old canvas and brushes. I started rediscovering the woman I used to be. Ethan noticed. "You're glowing lately," he said one morning. "It's beautiful." I didn't know how to respond. All I could do was smile. When Robert returned, I welcomed him back with genuine warmth, but something inside me had changed. I felt like I was living again, truly living. Eventually, Ethan moved out, found a part-time job, and rented a small apartment near campus. Before he left, he handed me a small package. Inside was a notebook with the words "Start Again" written on the cover. "I think you've got stories to tell," he said. "Don't stop now." Tears welled in my eyes. I hugged him tightly, knowing that our bond, however unusual, was meaningful. Not scandalous. Not shameful. Just human. He left, and life returned to a quieter pace. But I was no longer the same. I wrote every day. I painted. I laughed more. I even reconnected with old friends. What Ethan did was not what people might assume from the title of the story. He didn't betray me. He didn't cross a forbidden line. What he did was far more powerful. He reminded me of who I was before the years dulled me. He saw me. And in doing so, he helped me see myself again. So no, I never imagined my stepgrandson would do this. But I thank God that he did. Because he brought me back to life.